Hello students, welcome to Skholar, your one-stop solution for IAS preparation. My name is Anubhav Sharma and I am your faculty for Indian Polity. Students, in this module, we'll be understanding about Preamble. In fact, what I have done is to break down our understanding of Preamble into two modules. We will study everything that is important for us with respect to Preamble, mainly for prelims examination, but several parts of mains examination preparation will also get covered in these two modules that are exclusively based on our understanding of Preamble of Indian Constitution. So let's start with our module. We will be understanding everything that we need to know with respect to Preamble. So the first thing is the introduction. What exactly do we mean by Preamble? The term Preamble refers to the introduction or preface to any document. Students, when we talk about Indian Constitution, what exactly do we see? That it is the lengthiest constitution of all constitutions in the world. It has a number of articles, it has a number of schedules, it has so many things embodied in it, it has so many things which forms the constituent of the Constitution of India. We have fundamental rights, we have DPSPs, we have center-state relations, we have provisions with respect to the President, Parliament, we have provisions with respect to judiciary. What I'm trying to explain you here is that since there are so many things in our Constitution, we would need some kind of introduction by which we are able to communicate clearly as to what exactly are those moral maximums that we are trying to achieve, what exactly are those values and in which light we need to see and read a constitution. It actually acts as a way in which we are able to understand the moral end that we seek to achieve in every provision of our Indian Constitution. Thus, what do we see? That Preamble of Indian Constitution is the preface of Indian Constitution. So, Preamble of the Constitution is a brief explanation of the underlying philosophy and objectives of the Constitution. In fact, students, in our last module, we have studied in detail all aspects of philosophy of Indian Constitution, what exactly were the moral ends that we were trying to achieve. At that time, I said that the best way in which we can understand it is to understand Preamble, and that is what we are going to do here. So the first thing that we need to keep in mind is that American Constitution was perhaps the first constitution that began with Preamble, and the fact that both these constitutions, that is American Constitution and Indian Constitution, starts from the phase we the people, one can clearly see that Indian constituent makers borrowed the idea of Preamble from American Constitution. I hope this point is clear. Another point to note here that it was the objectives resolution moved by Pandit Nehru which reflected in Preamble of the Indian Constitution. So essentially there was objective resolutions which was read out by Jawaharlal Nehru, our first Prime Minister, and when we read these objective resolution in detail and then we read a Preamble, one can clearly see that our Preamble is deriving a lot of its values, a lot of its content from this objectives resolution. Objectives resolution, let's try to have a brief understanding of what all it included. So objective resolution was moved by Pandit Nehru in 1946 and it defined the aims of Constituent Assembly. That is, it wanted that Constituent Assembly clearly understand what exactly is their assembly trying to achieve, what exactly are the objectives, what exactly are the aims of Constituent Assembly. So what does it do? It encapsulates the aspirations and value behind the Constitution. It captures all the values that we seek to achieve by making this Constitution. What all are these values? It includes equality, liberty, democracy, sovereignty, and cosmopolitan identity. These all were the values which were present in the objective resolution of Nehru, and several of these values are actually finding its way in the Preamble of Indian Constitution. So one can clearly see the link between the objectives resolution of Nehru and the Preamble of Indian Constitution. Our Constitution is a moral commitment to establish a government to fulfill the promises given by the national movement. So we had a national movement for liberation. What exactly was this national movement about? It was about Poorna Swaraj. It was about total independence. It was about getting liberated from the colonial masters, that is colonial imperial British government. The whole idea was now that we are independent, we would need to embark upon creating a society, and that society must be driven by certain values. Preamble is just a way in which we are able to tell to the Constituent Assembly as well as to the people of India what exactly are the values that our Constitution will seek to achieve. In fact, when we talk about jurist Nani Palkiwala, one of the very eminent jurists of independent India, so he had actually called Preamble to be the identity of Indian Constitution. This can be a question that can be framed, that is a statement-based question, where it might be written that Preamble forms the idea of Indian Constitution, comment or discuss. At that time, we need to discuss everything that we have just discussed here, that we need to explain how exactly Preamble is capturing the national movement struggle, the country that we are trying to create, that is from standpoint of social justice, from standpoint of creating a society that is based on secular principles, so on and so forth. Now, let's try to understand the content of the preamble. Let's just read together what does the preamble of Indian Constitution say. It says, we, the people of India, having solemnly resolved to constitute India into a sovereign, socialist, secular and democratic republic, and to secure to all its citizens justice. Here justice would mean social justice, economic justice, political justice. Secure to all its citizens liberty, liberty of thought, liberty of expression, liberty of belief, liberty of having one's own faith and believing in that, and liberty of worship. Secure to all its citizens equality of status and opportunity, and to promote among all of them a feeling of fraternity, that is fraternity assuring the dignity of the individual and the unity and integrity of India, that is of the nation. In our Constituent Assembly, the 26th day of November, so this is very important for us to keep in mind that while Republic Day, that is 26th January, is taken generally as the day when the Constitution came into effect. But when we talk about compilation, that final compilation of Constitution, it happened on 26th November 1949. This is important for us to remember for the reason this question has been asked in prelims exam of several state PCS exams. So keeping state PCS at least in mind, please keep in mind this date of 26th November 1949. So what do we do in our Constituent Assembly? This 26th day of November 1949, do hereby adopt, enact and give to ourselves this Constitution. Now students, we will understand each of these terms in detail because a question in UPSC can be asked mainly in prelims examination where we would need to give clear understanding of what does it mean by having sovereign, socialist and secular democratic republic. We would need to understand what exactly sovereign means, what exactly democratic means, what exactly justice means, and in the course of these two modules, we'll actually understand the meaning of all of these terms. So another thing that we can keep in mind is what exactly preamble is containing. Preamble is containing the following four things. First, source of authority. It derives its authority from the people of India. This again is a very important point. This was the point which was taken in case Ananda Bharati case. It gave basic structure doctrine that it is because we the people have enacted this constitution is why we have a constitution. Thus, it will be the values that we cherish will be a part of constitution. It will not be the other way around. That is, constitution cannot be the source of our powers. Constitution will be the consequences of the values that we seek to achieve. That is why there is something called basic structure in Indian constitution which tries to protect that essence of us being Indians. We will understand this point in detail when we come to some of the landmark judgments that we will be studying. But just keep it in mind that with respect to preamble, it gives us source of authority, and it says that the source of authority of this constitution is the people of India. Just keep this point in mind. Secondly, it also tells us about the nature of Indian state. How? Because it declares India to be a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic and republican polity. It tells us that we are a sovereign country. We are a socialist country. We believe in secular principles. We believe in democratic ethos, and we are a republican polity. Republican polity means that the head of the state is an elected one. We will understand about all these terms one by one. Then what exactly is the third thing that preamble is containing? It is containing the objectives of the constitution. That now that we are embarking on creating a constitution, what exactly are we trying to achieve? It specifies justice, liberty, equality and fraternity as the objectives that we seek to achieve. It also tells us about the date of adoption, that is November 26, 1949, something that I have already discussed. Now, let's try to understand all the pillars of preamble, that is all the key terms, keywords which has been used in preamble, and we will try to understand its correct meaning, right? So the first is of course sovereign. What exactly sovereign means? Sovereign essentially means, and it implies, that India is neither a dependency nor a dominion of any other nation, but an independent state. Whenever we say that a state is a sovereign state, what exactly are we trying to say? That that state in itself forms a country. A state, that is, whatever the government of that country says will be the will of that people, will be the reflection of what that country wants. So it cannot be that tomorrow Uttar Pradesh, or for that matter Maharashtra, says that we are sovereign. No, you're not. Sovereignty applies to the territory of India, and it includes all the states. Sovereignty means that you are independent in yourself, and whatever you say will be taken as the word of that nation. So that is why when we talk about UN, India participates in it as a sovereign country. Whatever India says will be the word which the people of India wants to say. It does not mean that like Maharashtra, UP and other states are different from India. This is what we need to understand. So whenever we say there's a common term which gets used in newspapers and everything, that was the attack in the sovereignty. That means it is the attack in the people of a country as a unit. For example, there was a debate, there was this allegation which was being made that Russian hackers and Chinese hackers were involved in rigging the election, in the presidential election that happened last time between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. And it was said that this is an attack in the sovereignty. Why? Because someone else is trying to interfere with the elections of an independent sovereign country. So if someone else is trying to interfere in the internal matter, one can clearly say that this is an attack in the sovereignty. I hope you are able to understand clearly what exactly do we mean by the word sovereign. India is neither a dependency nor a dominion of any other nation, but an independent state. There is no authority above India. India can decide. India can take decisions for the people of India, and India does not need to ratify its decisions from any other authority. For example, when we talk about the British rule, Indians were looking for dominion status for a very long time. What exactly is dominion status? That with respect to some aspects, Indians will be able to govern itself, but with respect to some other aspects, British government will take decisions. Essentially, at that time, if we have a dominion status, we cannot call ourselves as sovereign. We can call ourselves as sovereign when we are not being dependent on any other power, and the government that we elect, the legislature that we enact, can take decisions on behalf of India. It is free to conduct its own internal and external affairs. India can either acquire a foreign territory or cede a part of its territory in favor of a foreign state. So let's say if tomorrow India decides to acquire some territory, it will become a part of territory of India. India also has the power to actually cede its territory, although it's a very complicated issue, we won't get into it. But that again is a part in which we need to understand what exactly do we mean by a sovereign state, right? Now, in 1949, what happened? India declared the continuation of its membership of the Commonwealth of Nations and accepted British Crown as the head of Commonwealth. What is Commonwealth? Essentially, these were those colonies which were built by the British Crown. When India got independent in 1947, there was this question: does India want to be a part of Commonwealth? Does it want to continue its membership of being a part of Commonwealth? India in 1949 decided yes, we would want to be a part of Commonwealth. and British Crown will be the head of Commonwealth. But that does not mean that India's sovereignty has been compromised in any manner, although some of the experts believe it is a way in which one can argue that India is not a complete sovereign. But now this argument is as much as dead, for the reason it has been clearly established that India is taking decisions on its own. India has a way in which it is able to conduct its election, it is able to have its representatives, have its own polity. India has an elected president, elected member of parliament, and that is how India is running the affairs. So in no way India is dependent on Commonwealth or, for that matter, British Crown to take its decision. Hence, what we need to keep in mind, the fact that India is still a member of Commonwealth of Nations does not mean that it is an attack in India's sovereignty, or for that matter, sovereignty of India is getting compromised in any manner. In the same way, India is also a member of UN. India being a member of UN can also involve India agreeing to some of the decisions which UN has taken. So that may confuse you, as you may think that means India is not being sovereign. Absolutely not. Essentially, what we are talking about when we talk about the idea of UN is that the countries are forming a global community, and it is in the welfare of the community, that is the global community, that countries will need to accept some decisions. For example, with respect to some climate conventions, what exactly do we see? Some of the countries are pledging to cut down their carbon emission, for which they would need to spend a lot of money, while some of the countries are pledging to use more greener technologies without pledging any carbon targets. So what exactly is happening? On one hand, developed countries are recognizing that the interest of the globe lies in initiatives that they are taking that may even involve sacrificing a bit of their wealth. On the other hand, it is not at all a compulsion on the part of countries to really comply on it, for the reason that they are sovereign in themselves. As such, what exactly are we trying to understand? First, sovereign means a country is able to form an entity on its own. It is not dependent on any dominion or anyone else. Second, India is a sovereign country because India can take its own decisions. Number three, India being a part of Commonwealth does not mean India is not sovereign. We have already seen it in the last 70 years of independence that India is taking its own decision. India has its own way in which it is running its external as well as internal affairs. Fourth, India being a part of UN also does not mean that India's sovereignty is compromised. India being a part of any global community is for us to ensure that we as a globe are growing, we are able to ensure humanity to prevail, and we are not vested in our own internal petty interest. I hope this point is clear. Now, the second pillar of the preamble, that is socialist. Something that we need to keep in mind is that the term socialist does not find itself in the pristine form of the preamble. That is the first version of preamble that got created and got inducted in Indian Constitution. The word socialist was not present. What happened? That after 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act of 1976, the word socialist was included. Another important point that we need to understand. Indian brand of socialism is democratic socialism, which is a blend of Marxism and Gandhism. Now this again is a very important thing. While when we talk about socialism, there are different ways in which we interpret socialism as to what brand of socialism that India is following, what brand of socialism some other country might be following. When we look at India, what exactly do we see? We have borrowed some ideas of Marxist socialism. At the same time, we have also kept some ideas of Gandhian socialism. We have kept ideas of panchayat from Gandhian socialism. On the other hand, with respect to the rights of the worker, labor, rights of the poor, that broadly has been borrowed from Marxist socialism. Again, a very important point which we need to keep in mind. Finally, one more thing, that Indian brand of socialism is democratic socialism, which is a blend of Marxism and Gandhism. That is, democratic socialism is what we are trying to achieve. We believe in the idea of socialism and we also believe in the ethos of democracy. So for a country like China, they are not properly democratic, but they still believe in ideas of socialism. In India, we believe in both democracy as well as socialism. Then communistic socialism involves the nationalization of all means of production, distribution and abolition of private property. So when we talk about communism, what exactly does it mean? Simply what it means is that state will control all factors of production. State will control everything that is in the country, that is land, that is property, that is any factory, and state will then decide how exactly the assets that is getting created by all these factors of production should be utilized for the betterment of the people. But when we talk about democratic socialism, it is different from that of communist socialism. How? For the reason, in India's democratic socialism, we believe in mixed economy. What does that mean? What it means is both public sector as well as private sector can coexist. When we try to understand what we're trying to achieve by democratic socialism, we rely on one of the comment made by Supreme Court of India, and it says that democratic socialism aims to end poverty, it aims to end ignorance, it aims to end disease and inequality of opportunity in the country. The idea is that we believe in democracy and we believe in socialistic idea. Our idea is to create a society by which we are able to take away poverty, we are able to make people who are depressed into the mainstream, bring them to the mainstream. We also would want to remove ignorance, that is to spread awareness in education, and we would want that there should be equality of opportunity that must happen, and that is the endeavor of democratic socialism. This is an important point for you to keep in mind, because this statement again can be one of the questions that might get asked, be it in paper 2 or for that matter in paper 4 of your mains examination UPSC. Now, there is one thing which generally confuses students, that since the inception of new economic policy of 1991, which basically is bringing of liberalization, privatization, globalization, have we compromised on our idea of socialistic goals? Now, there are different ways in which experts try to explain it. Let me give you a very simple and brief explanation. The government of India, or for that matter the state, the constitution does not see it in that way, that we have in any way compromised our goal of socialistic ideas, our goal of democratic socialism. Why? Because essentially, what does democratic socialism entail? What it entails is that we are able to reduce inequality, we are able to create more opportunities for the people in the lower strata of society, be it in terms of lower classes or for that matter in caste discrimination. But for us to be able to do so, what exactly is required? What is required is those social policies by which we are able to do so. For example, MG-Narega is one policy by which we are able to create jobs for the people in the rural areas. For example, midday meal by which we are able to give food to the people of the poor so that we are able to increase their enrollment in primary education. Then we have free education that is being given. Then we have all sorts of schemes which is being given to the poor. We have subsidy schemes on LPG, that is for the people to be able to utilize subsidy. But all of these developmental policies will have some kind of cost involved. In order to meet the cost involved, we need to find ways in which we are able to generate revenue. As such, when we talk about LPG, the way in which we need to look at it, the light in which we need to look at it is that this is a way in which state is able to increase its capacity in a manner that it will be able to use this newly generated wealth for the goals of democratic socialism, for the upliftment of the poor, for the upliftment of the marginalized. I hope you are able to now understand that even when we talk about privatization, liberalization, globalization, it in no way can be construed as a way in which we have compromised on our idea of democratic socialism. Now, another pillar is secular. We have already discussed about this in detail in our last module, but let me just again give you a brief overview. So, secular word was again added by an amendment, that is 42nd Amendment of Constitution in 1976. Why exactly was this word not included in the pristine Constitution? That is the first version of the preamble. For the simple reason that secular basically means the dharam nirpekshta, that is, state will always keep itself away from the religious matters. But as we have studied in the last module, India's brand of secularism requires state to have principal distance from all religion. On one hand, it should not get involved in the issues of religion. On the other hand, it must also take those measures by which it is able to assure people of all religion that your faith, your religion is getting protected. Thus, it was thought it would be prudent on our part to not use the word secular, because it might actually create some sort of problem for judiciary to correctly interpret the idea and the ideals of India's brand of socialism. In fact, India's brand of secularism. In fact, that is why it is said so that हमारी जो secularism थी उसका मतलब था पंथ निरपेक्षता, जबकि जो वेस्टर्न कंसेप्ट ऑफ सेक्युलरिज्म है उसका मतलब है धर्म निरपेक्षता. Dharam nirpekshta means neutrality with respect to religion, while Panth Nirpekshta means neutrality with respect to sects. I hope this point is clear because this question has been asked in mains examination in one way or the other in the last 4 years. So this again is something important for you to keep in mind कि भारत की जो सेक्युलरिज्म है वो पंथ निरपेक्षता है, ना कि धर्म निरपेक्षता. Constitution makers wanted to establish such a state, right? A state that is based on secular principles. Accordingly, Article 25 to Article 28 were granted, which are fundamental rights of fundamental right to religion. Indian Constitution embodies the positive concept of secularism, that is, all religion in the country have same status and support from the state, a point that we have covered in the last module. Then, when we talk about Western countries, it is believed that there is a negative concept of secularism where there has to be a complete separation of state and religion. Now students, because this is the way in which it has been explained in NCERT is why I have put it here in exactly the same manner. But in my personal opinion, one cannot really call anything to be a negative conception of secularism or positive conception of secularism. The idea of secularism is a lot of times dependent on the history of that country. For example, when we talk about France, what exactly do we see? That the whole idea of secularism was an outcome of the need which people felt to keep the matters of state away from that of religion. The French Revolution was actually about bringing science into the mainstream, into our society, and not be dependent on only church with respect to how people should be leading their life, right? But when we talk about India never had this issue where there was a conflict between the church, or for that matter religion, and policies by and large. It was mainly, the independence of India was mainly about liberation from our colonial masters, liberation from the imperialistic ideology. As such, in India, the idea of secularism is very different from that of idea of secularism in France. While that model of secularism is suited for that country, this model of secularism, our brand of secularism, is suited for a country like India. In the same way, we have a slightly different brand of secularism that is being practiced in the United States of America. As such, what one can clearly say is that secularism needs to be interpreted in accordance to the society in which it needs to operate. It needs to be interpreted in the manner in which the society functions, and thus one certainly cannot call one form to be negative or positive. But as I just said, because it was given in the NCERT in this form is why I have presented it in exactly the same form. Now we come to the next pillar of our preamble, and that is democratic. This is a word that has been used in the preamble. What exactly does it mean? So the term democratic is used in preamble in a broader sense, which embraces not just political democracy but also social and economic democracy. Essentially, what is democracy? When we think about democracy, the first thing that comes in our mind is elections. That in a democracy, people will elect their representatives, who anyone can actually stand for the election, and person can get elected, and that person will take decisions on behalf of the people. But that is a limited way to look at democracy, because that encompasses only political democracy. What we require is also social democracy and economic democracy. That is, people are acting in a democratic manner in their social lives. There is equality, there is liberty in the social lives of the people, and even with respect to economic policies of the country, it will also be based on democratic ethos, democratic principles. Social democracy is a way of life which recognizes union of Trinity. What exactly is this union of Trinity? Trinity of three values: liberty, equality, and fraternity. Let me explain what exactly do we mean by union of Trinity and how social democracy is a way in which we seek to achieve it. Just look at these values one by one: liberty, equality, fraternity. If we have a society which does not have equality, there is discrimination which is happening, there is unequal status which is being given to different sections of the people. Can in that society there exist liberty? Certainly not. If there is no equality, one can very well argue that there cannot be any liberty. Let's say there is equality in a society, but at the same time, liberty of that person has been curbed. Liberty of the person has been curbed to an extent where the person cannot express his expression, he cannot move freely, he will always be subjected to state scrutiny. There could be arbitrary laws that are being made which is subverting the freedom of that person. In such a society, what is the use of equality? Because equality will find its place only if there is liberty. It's when there is equality and liberty is when a person will be able to enjoy all the freedom at par with each other, and at the same time liberty will ensure that he is able to express himself, he is able to move freely, he is able to enjoy the idea of civic liberty, he is able to get to his maximum potential. Thus, equality and liberty will need to be together at all times. But then, if equality and liberty both are coexisting and society in its social life is accepting these values, invariably there will be fraternity. What is fraternity? That is a sense of brotherhood. People will always give space to someone else's liberty. Why? Because they believe the other person to be equal to him. At the same time, the other person will also extend those gestures by which they are able to accept our liberty, respect our liberty. Thus, what do we see? That there is a mutual respect that is going on when there is equality and liberty in any society, in their social lives. And this results in fraternity, brotherhood, because there will be love and respect towards each other. Liberty cannot be divorced from equality, equality cannot be divorced from liberty, nor can liberty and equality be divorced from fraternity. If there is fraternity in society, it will be an outcome of the presence of liberty and equality. If there is no liberty, equality cannot be there. If there is equality and there is no liberty, it is of no use. And fraternity will always be there if there is liberty and equality. That is all the statement is trying to explain. I hope you are not getting confused. To divorce one from another is to defeat the very purpose of democracy. So democracy cannot exist, that is social democracy cannot exist, if any of these three is not happening. This is what the crux of this statement is. Now, in the words of B.R. Ambedkar, the architect of Indian Constitution, without equality, liberty would produce the supremacy of few over the many. That is, while we were able to ensure liberty to the people, but we were not able to ensure equality, what will happen? In an unequal country, in an unequal society, only the people who are in the dominant position will be able to extend their supremacy over the very few. Then, if there is equality without liberty, it would kill individual initiative. That if you are not letting someone to have liberty and you are saying that you are equal to everyone else, it would mean that person will not be able to express himself. The person will not be able to do things by which he is able to contribute to the society by individual initiatives. When we talk about Galileo, an example that I used in my last module, this is exactly what we were saying, that there was equality because every person was supposed to follow the dictums of the church, but there was no liberty. Galileo had come out with one theory which was against the teachings of the church. This was something which was absolutely not acceptable for the church, and thus what did we see? That individual initiative got killed. Indian Constitution provides for representative parliamentary democracy, something that we know that in India we have a parliamentary democracy and it is a representative parliamentary democracy. We elect our representatives, they become a part of the parliament and then they legislate laws for the betterment of the society. Under this, executive is responsible to the legislature, yes, because executive will be formed by that party which has maximum number of legislators. Democratic character is manifested through universal adult franchise. These are ways in which we can see that Indian Constitution is trying to embrace democratic values. We see the influence of universal adult franchise in our Indian Constitution. We see periodic elections that is happening in India. We see rule of law, Article 14, being an intrinsic part of Indian Constitution. We see independence and autonomy of judiciary to be the basic structure of Indian Constitution, again highlighting the emphasis on democratic values. And then we also see absence of discrimination on arbitrary grounds, that it cannot be that state is indulging in discriminatory practice on arbitrary grounds. State will always need to answer to the reasons, to all those factors for which it is taking any decision. So students, in this module, that is part 1 of Preamble, we have studied about some of the important terms of the Preamble. We also studied about what exactly was the source of Preamble, what all are the things that Preamble of Indian Constitution is trying to explain. We studied about what does we the people mean. We studied about what does sovereign, socialist, secular and democratic means. And in the second module, we'll be studying about what all are the other words that has been included in the Preamble means, that is republic, justice, liberty, equality. We will study them one by one. This is all we had for this module. If you want to watch more of these videos, please log on to Skholar.com. Thank you.